rise of ISIS, the failure of the Arab Spring, the fracturing of Iraq and the spillover of violence from Syria have suddenly, dangerously destabilised the Middle East and North Africa. In the northern summer of 2014, over roughly 100 days, ISIS launched its blitzkrieg in Iraq. Libya's government collapsed. Civil war engulfed Yemen. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi declared himself caliph. The latest Israel-Palestine peace initiative failed in a welter of violence, and the United States and its allies, including the United Kingdom and Australia, sent aircraft and troops back to Iraq. Russia, a key sponsor of Bashar al-Assad in Damascus, reignited Cold War tensions by annexing Crimea, sent submarines and aircraft to intimidate its neighbours in their own sea and airspace, and supported Ukrainian rebels who shot down an airliner with huge loss of life. Iran continued its push for nuclear weapons, supported Assad in Syria, and yet became a de facto ally of the United States in Iraq, as each sought, for different reasons, to bolster the Baghdad government. As this disastrous year closed, with the fourth winter of war settling over Syria, 9 million Syrians languished in miserable, freezing mountain camps, with little prospect of going home. Half of Syria's people depended on aid to survive, and more than 200,000 had died. Across the increasingly irrelevant border with Iraq, thousands of people had been displaced, sold into sexual slavery, decapitated, shot in the street, or crucified for minor infractions of Sharia law. As idiosyncratically interpreted by whatever local ISIS thug happened to make it his business. Panic pervaded Baghdad, and Erbil, capital of Kurdistan, was a frontline city, within the sound of the guns and occasionally within reach of them. Foreign fighters from the Middle East, Europe, Australia, all over Asia, the Americas, and all parts of Africa poured into Syria and Iraq at 12 times anything seen at the height of the American War, swelling ISIS numbers above 30,000. For comparison, Al-Qaeda, at its peak before 9/11, never had more than 25,000. Hundreds poured across Syria's frontier with Turkey, a NATO member that nonetheless opened its border for fighters travelling to, or increasingly from, the conflict. ISIS provinces appeared in Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan and Egypt, and extremists in Indonesia and Nigeria swore allegiance to Baghdadi's new caliphate. Attacks by ISIS-inspired terrorists hit Europe, America, Africa, and the Middle East. 13 years, thousands of lives, and billions upon billions of dollars after 9/11, any gains against terrorism had seemingly been swept away in a matter of weeks. On 10 June 2014, ISIS seized Mosul, anchor of northern Iraq and home to more than 2 million. 12 days before the city fell, President Obama betrayed no inkling of impending collapse in a speech at the United States Military Academy at West Point. He failed to mention ISIS at all, having earlier dismissed them as a JV, junior varsity team, wannabes lacking the capability of Al-Qaeda, and spoke of what was once called the global war on terror as if it was winding down. "You are the first class to graduate since 9/11, the president said, who may not be sent into combat in Iraq or Afghanistan. When I first spoke at West Point in 2009, we still had more than 100,000 troops in Iraq. We were preparing to surge in Afghanistan. Our counter-terrorism efforts were focused on Al-Qaeda's core leadership. 4.5 years later, as you graduate, the landscape has changed. We have removed our troops from Iraq. We are winding down our war in Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda's leadership on the border region between Pakistan and Afghanistan has been decimated, and Osama bin Laden is no more. Today's principal threat no longer comes from a centralized Al-Qaeda leadership. Instead, it comes from decentralized Al-Qaeda affiliates and extremists, many with agendas focused in countries where they operate. And this lessens the